Welcome to Aquarian Diary, where we discuss issues around the emerging age of Aquarius. I'm your host, John Irving. Thank you for joining me. Greetings all. It is October 27th, 2022. As I've said before, a spiritual seeker is someone who is devoted to the spiritual path. That is, trying to understand and embody their higher spiritual being in physical reality, in the case of us who are incarnate here on Earth. With the ultimate aim, of course, being to achieve a state of enlightenment or freedom from the wheel of karma. And many spiritual seekers will place that journey, that exploration, that process of self-realization ahead of all other concerns. And they will be willing to make what other people would think are many sacrifices to achieve that goal, the goal of advancing their consciousness and their spirituality as much as possible in a given lifetime. So it is a question of how devoted you are to this process. Alternatively, a lot of people will focus on things like career as a main objective, or status, or some other more egocentric activity. Now, just because someone puts a lot of effort into pursuing spirituality, it doesn't mean that they are necessarily an entirely legitimate spiritual seeker. There may be people who are pursuing spirituality as if it is a goal in the same way that someone might want to achieve a status. In other words, there's a form of spiritual materialism at play. It's a subtle but important difference. You know, some people want to run the fastest marathon or something like that, and they're trying to do it to prove something to themselves. Well, when we're talking about spirituality, it is, in essence, separating ourselves from our ego. Not that we can ever entirely get rid of our ego, but we can achieve an awareness and mastery over it, which is a matter of maintaining a high level of consciousness, being able to differentiate who and what we really are from all of the illusions and maya of three-dimensional reality. Maya is another term for the illusory world of material reality. And what motivates a seeker? When you have had experiences of the divine, there is nothing in human experience that approaches that in terms of its intensity, power, or meaning. Ordinary human experiences pale in comparison. And so the seeker wants to experience that as much as possible. Because unlike typical human experiences, the energy of the source never wavers or falters. It is continuous, and it's not fleeting. And it may take many lifetimes for people to realize this, but it is an inevitable conclusion, however long it takes to arrive at. But my main point here was just to talk a little bit about how many actual spiritual seekers are there. And I would argue, based on my observations, that there are far fewer serious spiritual seekers than most people think. Just because someone is interested in psychic phenomenon or even spiritual phenomenon or things like astrology doesn't necessarily mean they're a spiritual seeker. They may just be curious about and interested in the phenomenon. In the same way that some people are fascinated by UFOs because they're just curious. The difference, like I said, is that a spiritual seeker will put all of the things aside as much as possible, practically, to focus on their spiritual development. Some have even gone and become a recluse, or lived in ashrams, or joined spiritual communities, or engaged in devotional practice, or meditated for 8 hours a day, or whatever the case may be. Whatever path opened up to them, they would pursue to the end and put as much of their concentration on that as possible. And that is what differentiates a serious spiritual seeker from people who are just curious. There's degrees, of course. We have people exploring the beginning stages of their spirituality, which is just more about curiosity. And then we move to the more intense end of the spectrum where people are very focused, if not solely focused, on that goal. So when I define someone who is a very serious spiritual seeker, I define it as someone who places the majority of their focus on that process. That means they will be, like I said, willing to forego many other kinds of more temporal or material or egoically oriented experiences for the sake of pursuing their spiritual evolution. And again, I'm suggesting that there are very few people on the planet who exhibit those characteristics. A very, very small fraction of humanity. And a lot of people talk about this age that we're moving into, this Aquarian age. I have talked about it a lot myself. And I have talked about how that energy is going to lift up the energies here on Earth and humanity along with it. But that does not necessarily mean that suddenly there's going to be billions of spiritual seekers. There may be more, but there probably isn't going to be like 50 or 60% of the population that are spiritual seekers. It'll probably still be like 1 or 2%. I don't know what the number is. Honestly, no one has ever calculated this empirically as far as I'm aware. But that is my point. It's not just about curiosity. It's about dedication, devotion, and concentration, and commitment. Strong energy here. And if you're one of those people, I would like to know you. I would like to be your friend. Because you're rare. And you need to pat yourself on the back for that. If you are one of those people and you are living in contemporary society, it can be very difficult and challenging. That's why a lot of people in the past would find ways of living outside of mainstream society. So they wouldn't have to deal with the barrage and deluge of lower consciousness energies, which are the vast majority of the energies on the planet. It was easier to go and be around other people who had a similar goal as you, and to not subject yourself to all of the drama and maya and illusion of the physical plane. And one of the other interesting things about that is that your family and the people that are familiar with you will probably not understand your path at all. They will not get it or appreciate it, and probably won't even respect it, in the West at least, which is another reason that these people tended to isolate themselves from mainstream society. There was an interesting movie released in 1981 called My Dinner with Andre. And the entire movie is just two guys having a deep conversation at a table while they're eating dinner in a restaurant. Now, I'm not entirely sure if it would still resonate today, but I saw it in the theater when it was released. And it's on point because one person has a very creative and kind of magical perspective on life, and the other has a very sort of straight-laced approach to life. I won't spoil it, but if you ever are in the mood, you might find that interesting. There are some great books on this topic. A classic is Autobiography of a Yogi, or one that is told in story would be Siddhartha, my favorite book of all time. People who passionately devoted themselves to their spiritual evolution. I'm not necessarily advocating a path of asceticism, but what I'm saying is true. Historically, many seekers chose that path for those reasons. So again, to summarize, there are very few serious spiritual seekers on planet Earth. And there always has been. That's just the way it is. Thanks for your support. I'll put links in the episode description that are relevant. All the best. Take care. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye for now.